Hi, I am Amy Riordan, and I am going through my book, All of You, chapter by chapter. And today I am going to be talking about chapter 5, which is breaking free from shame. Shame is, and I'm sure I've mentioned it probably in every video leading up to this one, shame is one of the biggest things that affected me and affects many women, really, I would say all women who are wrestling with sexual strongholds that they are trying to find freedom and healing from. There are so many women still, and maybe you are one of them. If you're not one of them, you know somebody, whether you realize it yet or not. There are so many women and Christian women, women who love Jesus, who are wrapped up in shame due to sexual strongholds of any kind, pornography, um, sexual fantasies, just any kind of sexual stronghold. It's talked about a whole lot more now than it used to be. But just to share some more of my story, when I was really um, trapped in pornography and not knowing what to do, not wanting to tell anybody. Shame was one of the biggest factors, and I did not recognize that at the time. And I would still say that shame is, if someone is addicted to pornography, for instance, shame to me is a bigger part of the issue than the actual addiction because it keeps, to me, this is the addiction and this is shame on top of it. Because shame tells us who we are, not truth. It lies about who we are. And it causes us to see ourselves in ways that God does not see us. And shame, a lot of times people can think that, believe that shame and guilt are similar, but they are very different. Guilt is based on an action, like I did something bad, I did something that I shouldn't have done. Shame is something entirely different, where it can be tied to our identity, where instead of saying I did something bad, shame says I am bad. There's something wrong with me. And that's what it speaks to us, that there's something just deeply wrong with the core of who we are. And sometimes we don't even recognize it. I know for many years I did not at all recognize that shame was something I was dealing with. Maybe I had just always dealt with it. I don't know why I didn't recognize it, but it was one of the biggest things that Jesus set me free from, layer after layer after layer. And speaking of layers, when I first published this book, my friend Mary had helped me with the cover and the back cover and everything. And we um, went to a local coffee shop because I said, I can at least buy you a cup of coffee for what you did. Because she said, you don't need to pay me. And I said, yes, I do. And I said, well, at least I can get you some coffee. So we went to this local coffee shop, and I was going to give her a copy of this book. And when we were, I don't remember if it's when we got there or when we were leaving. It would have been when we got there and when we ordered. I, without thinking, said, oh, yes, I want to buy her coffee because she was so kind in designing my book cover for me. And the woman behind the counter said, oh, you wrote a book. What is it? And my friend Mary had the book because I just gave it to her, and she handed it to the woman behind the counter, and she looks at it, and all of a sudden my heart just like stopped. And I've been talking about this subject for years now. Um, but she looks at it and she said, oh, and she's reading the subtitle, Hope and Healing for Women Seeking Freedom from Sexual Strongholds. And it seemed like it took her forever to read it. And shame, like that distant feeling that I don't always feel anymore concerning this topic. It came rushing back, and it took me a while to realize, oh my goodness, that is shame. But I just felt this, I just wanted to run, like, oh my goodness, because I can share my story It's one thing to share it on a podcast, to share it on a video, to share it somewhere else, but it's different. And I recognize this, and I recognize it for a lot of you. Um, and for myself, when we share with the people around us, that feels very, very different because we're going to see them again. And shame will speak so many lies to us about who we are. Um, and so I just wanted to share that story. Every once in a while, shame can just speak to us and tell us who we are, and it's not at all true. And I've been not reading directly out of the chapters, but I wanted to today, um, just to read some indicators, that maybe you might be dealing with shame. Maybe you're well aware that you're dealing with shame, but these are some thoughts that can go through our minds, that can show us maybe we're wrestling with shame. This might not be tied to shame, but these can be indicators. If you have the thought, I am the only woman who deals with this, I could never tell anyone. See if any of these apply to you. I need to hide this. This must just be who I am. Because shame will convince you that this is just who you are to the core of your being. There is something wrong. Oh, I guess that was the next one. There's something wrong with the core of who I am. I caused that person to abuse me. Part of it felt good. It was my fault. I am defective as a woman. And that's the thing with pornography, any kind of sexual strongholds. Still, even all of these years later, this still can be looked at as a man's issue, and that adds shame to this. This is not a man's issue. There have been times in the past, where I was someone in another church was wanting me to speak at their church, but their pastor didn't want me to come because the pastor didn't think this was an issue for the women in their church. There most definitely were women in that church wrestling with that, but often they're so afraid to speak up. Who do you tell? And then if they do tell the pastor, he might not know anybody because no one's speaking up. So that's why I continue to speak up about this. And that's why other women now, there's several other women who speak up about this. I'm a very private person. This goes against my grain to do a lot of these things, but I want to share what God has done in my life, and just shame was one of the biggest things that he set me free from and continues to set me free from and show me, Amy, that shame when it whispers in my ear, because a lot of times, sometimes it can be loud and we recognize it. Other times, and I think a lot of times, it can be very quiet, quiet enough that we may not recognize that it's shame speaking to us and telling us who we are, and it's not true at all. Another thing that can be an indicator of shame is feeling incapable of doing anything, trapped by invisible walls around you. Being performance driven, that can be another one. I know many women who are in the church who are, or at least were, addicted to pornography, and their way of dealing with that was to do more and more and more in the church, volunteer everywhere in the church to try to make this right, or to try to not be found out. Or shame can make people performance driven to try to work their way out of this. Beating yourself up for even the slightest mistakes can be shame. Letting people abuse you or treat you horribly because you don't feel that you deserve better, that can be shame. Keeping relationships surfacey, including your relationship with God, that can most definitely be shame, because shame affects our relationship with God. We hide. Adam and Eve, if you think about that, way back in Genesis, they were hiding from God. And we know, and they knew God could see us, but we still hide. Shame causes us to hide. And it's in being vulnerable and transparent and speaking out about shame. You don't have to do this. You don't have to do what I'm doing. It's wise to pray about who to talk to. But shame wants to stay hidden. And when it comes out into the light, that's when shame, the hold that it has on you, will lessen. Feeling buried in what you have done or keep doing, that can be shame as well, because we can feel absolutely buried by shame. And shame is a barrier to building intimacy with Jesus. And that is one of the biggest parts of this book, is knowing that God wants all of you. He knows it all. And we know that he already knows it all, but shame will cause us to hide. And Jesus is the one who heals our hearts and sets us free. If we could do it ourselves, we would have done it already. You would have done it already. So I wanted to encourage you that Jesus can heal your heart. You may know where the shame came from. Maybe it was something you've done. Maybe it was something that was done to you. Maybe it's a combination of both. Jesus can heal your heart. He can heal your heart from something that happened this morning. He can heal your heart from something that goes way back to your early childhood. He can heal everything in between. Whether it seems huge to you, or maybe sometimes I talk to a lot of women who brush things off saying other people been through worse things. Shame is shame, and Jesus can heal your heart, and he can set you free from that shame. And it's in knowing that you can go to him. And if you haven't watched my last video, I would encourage you to watch that, because that dream that I had really showed just the shame that I felt and how much Jesus just wanted to walk with me through that and heal my heart. And that's what he's done and continues to do in many areas of my life. And he wants to do the same for you. The words that other people may have spoken over you, the words that you have spoken over yourself, if they don't line up with who God made you to be, then that can be very easily tied to shame, and that's not who you are. And shame can tell you, no, that this is who I am. You don't know this is who I am. But no, it's not who you are. And I just pray that even you can pray and ask God to show you where shame is in your life. And again, maybe you are well aware, but often we're not. Often shame can be so much in the background, speaking to us and telling us who we are, and that affects our relationships. Sometimes, I think I mentioned, we can have surfacey relationships with people, with God, with other people. Other times, when we find acceptance with people and we're dealing with a lot of shame, we could cling to that person for dear life because we feel like that might be our only chance with someone. But shame just lies. Shame lies. And I want to encourage you to go to my website. I will put the link in the show notes in the comments as well. I have a free PDF guide on breaking free from shame. It's several pages that you can download. It's free. And my website is walkinginfreedomministries.com. And as of right now, when I'm making this, it's on the homepage, but I will attach the link for you below. That's for you, free to have. It's several pages, and I just pray that that's an encouragement for you as well. So if you have my book, I know that the chapters turn out differently than what I share here, so I encourage you to read it. If you don't have this and would like it, it is on Amazon. But again, you don't necessarily need it to go through this with me. But if this is something that you deal with, or something that you know of somebody else just wrestling with these things and not knowing how to find their way out, this book would be an encouragement to them. So I will see you next time for the next chapter. Bye.